To me, it's about how much you allow that, right? It's like you teach people how to treat. Food has always been such a huge part of.
No, not a worry. I'm over here blinded by all this beautifulness, and I'm like, oh my God.
On this episode of Another Act, I sit down with game-changing musician Kelis to talk about her pivot into the world of culinary arts, how food and music have always coexisted in her world, and yes, about that new music that just dropped.
Kelis, I remember, about 12 or 13 years ago, I was interviewing you for a piece for Vibe magazine in West Hollywood, and we were there to talk about a new album, but you shared then with me that what you really wanted to do was go to cooking school. And I remember thinking back then, well, that's a pivot. How did all of that first happen for you, and what made you decide to pursue a career in the culinary fields while still being really at the top of your music game?
Well, yeah, it's been a long time for sure.
Yeah.
So it's good to see you. I mean, honestly, it didn't really feel like a pivot for me. It was really just, me being creative and being able to sort of express myself in a different medium. And then I ended up, I went to Le Cordon Bleu, and everything kind of from that point, obviously I went back into music. And I think really coming onto the farm, we decided to move out of the city and get some land and start growing stuff. And that really sort of took off my whole, my imagination and all the things that I wanted to do in the culinary space.
What was it that you found you were getting immediately from this culinary world that maybe you weren't getting from music?
I don't think it's really an issue of one versus the other. I think that, I've been on tour for the past 20 something years, and, traveling being such a huge part of what we do as artists. I'm definitely the kind of person that when I get someplace, I'm like, okay, let's put our bags in the hotel. Let's go walk around and see what's around, So for me, I really felt like food has always been such a huge part of my musical life anyway, just because I'm on the road and I'm like, what can I eat? What's good? What's here? Always getting recommendations and that kind of thing. So it was perfect just because I feel like, I don't know, it just seems like everything was sort of like an organic kind of natural. It was more like adding to as opposed to adjusting or switching or, it kind of was just like adding to my repertoire of things that I love to do and that I'm interested in.
Tell me a little bit about Sample the World and how did that come to you?
Well, it's one of those things, again, it's sort of, this is what I do anyway. I'm a huge foodie, obviously. So for me, it was a really, it was an easy yes. When I was asked to host, I was like, oh my God, I literally do this.
Absolutely. And, I really love seeing you in this space of hosting and introducing different ways to think about food. We obviously, thankfully got some great content from you at the beginning of the pandemic, about food. And then if we follow you on Instagram, which who isn't following you on Instagram, we also get a chance to get a lot of really great content about cuisine. And one thing that really, I think surprised a lot of people, especially as they started, finding new things to discover during this time, is your love of farming. And it is such a big part of your life, and your Bounty Farm is such a huge hit. Why is this important to you, and how did you get started with that?
It's funny how life comes full circle. I went to a private school in New York growing up that was called Manhattan Country School. And so they had a farm up in the Catskills, in Roxbury, New York. And so we used to have to go there, I guess, a couple times a year to graduate and have to learn the other side of life and the other way to do things. Right. And so I just remember being little and loving that. And then I think also just legacy and wanting to leave. I've got 3 kids and I want them to see really what power looks like. I think when you own your own land and when you're able to grow your own food and kind of control how you're eating and what we like to eat and how we, nourish ourselves, I think there's something really beautiful about that.
You're giving us something different that we haven't seen in the world of culinary, just kind of across the board. But talk to me about that. Is it that you would love to, highlight chefs of color or female chefs, or what are you thinking about maybe how you can translate some of what you've done so well in music to this world?
As a woman and as a Black woman, as a chef, there are a lot of things that are put on us or that we're kind of left out of. People like to see us in the kitchen, but they don't want to give us our flowers, right? So to speak. And so I think that right now, especially, it has a lot to do with me as a chef, like I said, as a Black woman, as a chef in the kitchen, as someone who is educated and who has paid my dues. Wanted just to lift up people because, like I said, this year has been trying on so many levels. And then, of course, absolutely, like all of the people of color, all of the women chefs, like that to me is it's a no-brainer.
I love all of that. Also, gotta say, I love that you recently announced that there is a new single coming and it's called Midnight Snacks. I feel like this is kind of a culmination of your two worlds meeting. Tell me a little bit about that.
Always. Well, you know what's so funny? Someone had mentioned to me, like, it was probably a few months ago, they're like, you always name stuff after food. And I was like, no, I don't. They're like, no, you do. And I was like, well, before food, did I? And I was like, no, I do. I guess I do.
Yeah. Hello,
whether it's
milkshake.
sugar honey iced tea or obviously milkshake, you know, or yeah, it's a tasty album. I think, well, you know, it's funny though. It's very, it's a really carnal thing, right? It's the one thing that everybody does, right? And like even more than music, food is something that not only brings people together, but it really defines us. You know, I always say like, tell me what you eat and I can tell you who you are. You know, and I think that it tells you about your culture, your upbringing, you know, what kind of parents you had. Like food is such a defining like ingredient, I think, in making up who we are, that I can't help but write about it and I can't help but sing about it because it is it's where we are most human.
How is, you know, really deciding to live your life on your own terms and do things that you want to do, like explore this world of culinary, playing into who you are as a musician right now?
I come from really strong parents, and like, so I had a really good foundation. Even when, you know, I think as an artist, we have to get used to having thick and tough skin. I think just from out the gate, I had a good foundation, and I always felt like what I had to say was valuable because I had to say it, right? And so not that it made it more valuable than anybody else or that it was ever above anything, but it was always just that like, I have a place here and you don't have to like it and you don't have to agree. You don't even have to give it because it's not yours to give, right? But like, this is my space. I'm here. You didn't put me here. You can't take me out, right? And like, I'm going to say what I have to say. And so it's not about pleasing people. My goal is to be authentic with myself and to continue to like narrate my own story. And so I think that like we as artists, you know, we're subject to so much opinion, but it's only, to me, it's about how much you allow that, right? It's like you teach people how to treat you. I believe that in this space as well. And so like, I think I come out with everything, whether it's food or music. And I'm like, I'm an absolute 100% like, I don't half-ass anything. I don't believe in it.
I love all the things that you just said. I know everyone else watching this loves it too. Kelis, it is always great to check in and talk with you. Still one of my favorites. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks.
Absolutely.